Hello! Here is a video where we give you a polar and we're going to ask you to find the rectangular. Let's say you're given r is equal to 3 and theta is equal to, let's say, pi over 3. Okay? What is that in rectangular? So let's draw it out here. In terms of the unit circle, we're given r is 3, pi is, the angle is pi over 3. So we're over here at pi over 3. Theta is pi over 3. And this distance here, r, is equal to 3. What location in terms of x and y is this? Okay, that's what we want to know. What is the x and y location of that point? Well, we have the transformation equations. R is equal to the square root of x squared plus y squared. X is equal to r cosine of theta. Y is equal to r sine of theta. Okay? Before we were given x and y, had to find r and theta. Now we're given r and theta, we were expected to find x and y. Notice that just knowing r is not sufficient in doing this yet, but just knowing r and theta, I can find x and y here. So here, x is equal to r, which is 3 times the cosine of theta, which is pi over 3. Okay? Now, what's the cosine of pi over 3? That's 1/2, correct? So this 3 times 1/2, which is 3/2. Okay? Now over here, this becomes 3 sine of pi over 3. And what is the sine of pi over 3? Pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3. Yes, that's right, it's root 3 over 2. So this becomes 3 times root 3 over 2. So this becomes 3 root 3 all over 2. Now we know what x and y is. You see that? We found x and y given r and theta. We know x and y. So transforming this from polar to rectangular world, I know it's just 3/2, comma, 3 root 3 all over 2. That's it. That's it. Let's do another example. Let's say I'm giving you 5 comma pi over 6. And you know what? Let's make it flavorful. Let's make it a negative pi over 6. I want to find what that is in rectangular. So first, we're going to come here and think about where we're located at. Always draw what you're given so that you know where you're located at. It's very important. Okay? So I have something at negative pi over 6, which is down here, negative pi over 6. And the length of this, r, is equal to, what do we say, 5? We said it's 5. Okay, so now I'm interested, what is this x, and what is this corresponding y? Clearly, x is positive and y is negative. So we're going to have to get that for us to have an answer that makes sense. We're going to have y, the y coordinate, have negative value to respect the fact that we're at negative pi over 6, a rotation that is clockwise, as opposed to a rotation that is counterclockwise. Alright? So, I've erased our transformation equations, but it's okay. It's good to use repetition in writing them down. The transformation equations is r is equal to the square root of x squared plus y squared. X is equal to r cosine of theta. And y is equal to r sine of theta. Notice that we have r and theta. R is 5, theta is negative pi over 6. And so over here, I can change this to 5 cosine of negative pi over 6. As cosine is an even function, the negative inside here disintegrates, it goes away, because cosine of negative x is the same thing as cosine of x. Cosine of negative theta is the same thing as cosine of theta. And this equals a 5 cosine of pi over 6. Okay? So what's the cosine of pi over 6? Okay, that's root 3 over 2. So this is 5 times root 3 over 2, which is just 5 root 3 over 2, which is what it is for x. For y, this becomes 5 sine of negative pi over 6. Alright? Sine is an odd function, meaning the negative inside pops out, meaning this equals negative 5 sine of pi over 6. And if you don't recall negative and even and odd properties of sine and cosine, I have not made a video about that, but I will make it very soon. But over here, as you know, all that we must do now is evaluate what sine of pi over 6 is, and that's 1/2. So this is negative 5 times 1/2, which becomes negative 5 over 2. And our transformation of 5 negative pi over 6 into rectangular coordinates is just merely 5 root 3 all over 2, comma, negative 5 all over 2. And look, yes! We've established that the y coordinate is negative. That really makes sense. We know that this is negative 5 over 2. And over here, this is positive 5 root 3 all over 2. So our answers make sense because the negative on the y parameter, that's exactly what we wanted to find. Because if we got something like a positive value for y, then it wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't be at the appropriate location.